to episode number 5 of Super Scary.
I'm Bender.
I'm Nick.
And today we're going to be... Well, today's our first Super Scary double feature.
It's a double feature just like the drive-ins.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about Ernest, Scared Stupid, and Killer Klowns from Outer Space. And real quick, before we get started, I just want to point out, I recently purchased Killer Klowns at Walmart for $5. You should too. However, this cover art is abysmal. God awful.
No good.
It's terrible. It does not reflect the really kind of the charm of the film at all. It attempts to make it look scary, and it's just the worst.
To me, it gives off the vibe of like an early 2000s like shitty clown movie that you would have seen in Hollywood Video.
It's like this cover art is like if ICP made a horror movie and was like marketing it. This is what it would look like.
Yeah,
but
they tried to go like the Wicked Clowns direction.
It's terrible.
It's no good.
It's terrible. But anyways, what do you want to start with today, Ernest or Klowns?
Let's see. Klowns came out first, so...
Okay, we'll start with Killer Klowns from Outer Space.
Came out in 1988.
Yep.
Directed by, written by, and effects done by the Chiodo brothers, who were also, I guess, big players in the effects scene when it comes to practical effects. They did some work on Critters, which is one that we're definitely going to have to cover on this show at some point. One of my personal favorites.
Oh, yeah, I haven't seen Critters.
Oh, it's amazing. We'll do that one later on. But Critters, they worked on Team America World Police. Did some work on Pee-wee's Big Adventure, if you recall the Large Marge scene.
I love that scene.
That's the Chiodo brothers, not to be confused with Chiodos the band.
Right. Right. They're all best friends.
Yeah.
Until they get redefined. The movie stars Grant Kramer as Mike Tobacco, which I thought was hilarious. Yeah. I didn't notice that until the credits rolled. And I was like, what? Okay.
Perfect name. Yeah,
perfect name. Suzanne Snyder played Debbie Stone. John Allen Nelson as Sheriff Dave. And John Vernon as Officer Curtis Mooney.
You said you're a big fan of Mooney.
Probably
right?
my favorite character. I loved Mooney. Basically, obviously, you can probably tell from the title what happens in this movie is there's a small town and some killer clowns come from outer space and invade. And the reason I love Mooney so much is because he is just so ready to think it's a prank.
He thinks the whole thing's a prank.
All of it. And he just lets the town go to hell.
At one point, there's a scene where, like, every line in the police station, the phones are just ringing off the hook, and he's just sitting there smoking a cigar, reading, like, a gun and ammo magazine.
Yeah, because he's just like, I'm not going to be fooled by this prank.
He would rather sit there and be confident in the fact that he's not going to be fooled than even investigate a little bit.
Yeah.
He doesn't even leave the station to check out one call. Just
because he's the veteran cop and he just knows everything. It's great. He was awesome. When watching this movie, I thought it was very fitting because you have all of these legitimate clown sightings nowadays.
Yeah.
This movie really, with that going on, really kind of invokes that horror of seeing a clown in real life.
Yeah. And there is a good deal of horror in Killer Klowns, even though it's kind of widely known as a cult classic.
Sort of goofy.
Yeah, it's very goofy, in fact, but there are some scenes that I remember seeing as a kid. It's probably one of the first horror movies that I watched. But earlier today we were talking about a few scenes from this movie, and you mentioned the one where they're kind of moving slowly through the streets, almost like a parade.
Yes.
You know, all the clowns are, and there's this huge machine that's just sucking up these big
cotton candy cocoons.
Yeah.
The cocoons!
And they're filled with people.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen this movie, that is one of the things that the clowns do. Besides outright killing people, they will zap them with a sort of ray gun that then encases the person in a cocoon of cotton candy.
Yeah, it's great. And that scene, that parade, and they've got this giant machine, and there's streamers everywhere, and the music is real creepy, and It was effective.
It was.
I was much more scared watching it. This was my second time seeing it, and I was like, man, this is creepy. It's a creepy movie sometimes.
And visually, we recently talked about Night of the Comet. Some of the visuals in this movie reminded me of that and gave me the same sort of feeling.
The sets, again, much like Night of the Comet, the sets are super 80s.
Yeah.
And they're awesome. So awesome.
Yeah. And just a fun fest for anyone who's a fan of practical effects in horror movies.
It's really great. I mean, and what I loved most about the movie, before we get to Ernest, is that they really take the whole clown idea and really run with it.
Yeah.
And like everything in the movie is based off of that. I mean, they, multiple groups of them will drive around in a little tiny clown car, and they have the cotton candy that they turn people into. They put people into balloons sometimes. Their spaceship looks like a circus tent.
Yeah. Some of the kills are just really inventive. The shadow puppet on the wall.
Good.
That one of the clowns actually does a shadow puppet that turns into some sort of kind of like a dinosaur monster and just swallows up the people looking on from the streets. It's really cool and pretty neat effect for a movie that came out in 1988 without any CG or anything.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. And like you said, they really ran with the whole circus theme.
Yeah.
You never see any clowns just picking up like a butcher knife from someone's kitchen and hacking someone away.
Right.
All of the kills incorporate that circus theme, and they almost have a little bit of humor to them.
Yeah, it's great. Plus, there's an original song written for the movie, which I think is a trend that has died off in Hollywood cinema, and it needs to come back because that song is awesome.
It really is. I rewatched it to do this episode, and I forgot all about that song.
So
man,
good.
that song's so cool.
So how about Ernest?
Well, we can bridge the gap into talking about Ernest by mentioning the fact that the Chiodo brothers did the work as far as visuals go on Ernest Scared Stupid, and they reused two of the clown masks that were used in Killer Klowns for the trolls that you see in Ernest Scared Stupid. So, did a little reading. They said it was probably less of an homage and more of them trying to save a little bit of the budget of the film. Because the Ernest movies aren't big budget Hollywood blockbusters or anything. In fact, Ernest Scared Stupid was the final Ernest movie that was released theatrically under the Touchstone film moniker. So after that, it was all straight to home box office, as they called it back then.
Yeah. Well, Ernest came out in 1991. It was directed by John R. Cherry III. It stars Jim Varney as Ernest and Eartha Kitt, the old lady, Frances Hackmore.
Who you might recognize from the Batman TV series.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she played Catwoman.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time I'd seen Ernest.
Any Ernest movie?
Any Ernest movie. So this is my first introduction to the character. And I'll have to say, the movie was kind of like all right. It was, it was pretty good. I tried to watch it with the mindset of a child.
It's one of those that I feel a lot of nostalgia for.
Yeah.
But I don't consider it to be like a classic of horror cinema or anything. It's a kid's movie.
Much like Night of the Comet, even though I feel like Night of the Comet is meant to be more mature, much in the same light, definitely watch Ernest Scared Stupid with your kids.
Yeah.
I did, however, really like Ernest as a character. I loved that he's sort of like this wacky redneck Pee Wee Herman.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that he's always sort of narrating his own, or just whatever he's doing. He's got to come up with metaphors for whatever it is. Right in the beginning, when he's raising himself on his dump truck.
Yeah.
And he calls himself
the Duke of Dust.
And I was like, all right, that's how this movie is going to go.
Yeah. And Ernest, you might recall, they do some of those like jump cuts to like him being a different character at times.
Yeah.
You know, which, I mean, it's not exactly the same, but you see a lot of stuff like that now, especially on shows like Family Guy, where you get the kind of non sequitur thing.
Right, where they like say a joke and then they cut away to a literal representation of said joke.
Yeah. So
you do get that.
One thing that I wanted to make sure I talked about was, though it is pretty lightweight at this point in my life, when I first saw this movie, I was horrified when I was taking a shower that I was going to turn around and one of those trolls would be there and turn me into a piece of wood.
Yeah.
It was just... It's a creepy thought.
It is.
You usually don't see kids being targeted, so that is a little bit, I guess, of a outside the box thing for a kids' horror movie to do.
Right.
To actually see kids being targeted and, them not escaping, at least right away.
Right. I mean, it all works out in the end.
Of course, you would expect it to.
But it is. Yeah, it's definitely, the troll, the main troll in the film does go specifically for children and, gets what he comes for most of the time too. So it's just a little scarier, I think, for kids.
Yeah, and it won't spoil how Ernest has to take the trolls down, but I will say that one thing that you might notice if you watch Ernest and then Killer Klowns or vice versa is the death sequences for the trolls and the clowns are very similar.
Yeah.
When whatever happens to them happens that makes them die, the sort of death animation, as we might say in video games now, they're very similar.
Right. And I do like, towards the very end is when you get the similarities between Ernest and Killer Klowns, and I did really appreciate it and enjoy it. You know what I loved about this movie though, honestly, was the opening sequence.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
I loved that as a kid too. Even though I hadn't seen any of those movies, I thought it was so cool.
Yeah, it's so great, and I just love how expressive Jim Varney's face is. And so for the whole opening, he's just putting his face through moss, whoa, look how scary everything is.
The beginning of this movie is a big mishmash of classic horror movies with Jim Varney, Ernest acting extremely scared, stupid, you might say. So, but yeah, there's to go down the list. Excuse me, I'm going to read these off to you. But you've got Nosferatu, White Zombie, Phantom from Space, The Brain from Planet Arus, The Screaming Skull, Missile to the Moon, The Hideous Sun Demon, The Giant Gila Monster, The Killer Shrews, Battle Beyond the Sun, and the original Little Shop of Horrors.
So it's a great lineup of quick clips and cuts from those old films, and
all movies that you could use as a jumping off point right now and go and watch any of them, and they'd be a good choice for
spliced in with Ernest pretending to be scared.
Yeah,
it's great.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's our first double feature.
Yeah,
and we successfully got through everything we wanted to talk about.
Today's the 5th episode, so maybe we'll do a double feature every 5 episodes or so.
Sounds good to me.
Something like that. Anyway, thank you for joining us. I'm Bender.
I'm Nicholas.
We'll see you next time on Super Scary!
Son of a bitch.